Hello, my friends, and I hope you are having a fantastic day. I'm going to be entirely honest, I was not planning to do a Dragon Age video today, but then I saw this. DragonAge The Veilguard only carries forward 3 decisions made in Inquisition, none from Origins or Dragon Age 2. And after I decided to make my video on this, a person was kind enough to actually point out that there was basically an entire meltdown on Twitter about this specific situation. Now, personally, for me, if I had liked the combat, if I had been okay with the art style, and if I'd been all right with the character creator, this would have been the nail in the coffin. This is just further proof that I knew from the start that this game wasn't going to be something I was interested in playing. One of the reasons that I loved it so much was the way the story carried through. Mass Effect did the same thing. So you played your story through the first one. The stories actually followed you through into the second one, changed things about the environment, about the world, followed you through into the third one, changed more things. Your character from the second game came back into the third game, and you got to decide if you were going to sacrifice her or not. All the choices that you made in the second game impacted stuff in the third game. And now they're just basically saying, we don't need all that. We just need these 3 things. I hadn't been made aware of this IGN article until after I'd started looking through the responses to this news. And the way they're trying to explain this laziness, lack of creativity, desire to go their own direction, call it what you want, away is that it's an emphasis on not contradicting previous choices. So this article is all about basically trying to start with a clean slate. They keep talking about how Rook is a clean slate, about how moving to Northern Thedas is a clean slate, about how they don't want to be tied to the events of the previous games. Yet at the same time emphasizing that Solas is who the storyline centers around. And there's a lot about Solas in there. So much. You can tell, and honestly, Corian Bush says that she did, in fact, romance Solas as her Inquisitor. I mean, I did that one once. It's actually a very emotional storyline. I preferred my Cullen playthrough, but it's still a good storyline. It's even more frustrating when you get to the end. And I'm going to assume that by this point, those of you who are listening either don't know the games, aren't going to play the games, or you have played the games and you're very passionate about the games. So either way, spoilers aren't going to affect you. You've had plenty of time to play them if you haven't yet, or plenty of time to research them if you wanted to. So at the end of Dragon Age, the Inquisition, your character is given the choices to disband the Inquisition or turn it over to the Chantry. Your character, there's DLC in which you then have the choice to drink from a well. Then, of course, Solas kills Flemeth, who is another elven god. And he does this in, of course, his quest to recombine Thedas and the Veil, because he's the one who broke them apart. At the end, you can either vow that you are going to save him from this, or you can vow that you're going to save the world, basically. Those are your choices. With all the choices, all of the story, all of the lore that you build throughout your playthroughs of Dragon Age, through Dragon Age Origins, and then you take those into Dragon Age 2, and then you take the combination of the 2 into Dragon Age Inquisition. This is what they let you keep. You get to rebuild your Inquisitor in the game, and give it the name, and you get to say what your romance option was, whether you disbanded or kept the Inquisition, and whether you vowed to stop Solas or if you vowed to save him. Those are the 3 things you get, nothing else. You don't get to talk about who drank from the well. There's nothing in there about who you left behind in the Fade, and just 100 other choices that honestly, right now, even as I sit here, my mind boggles trying to remember all the choices that I made throughout these games that just in this 4th game do not matter because blank slate. Because they much would rather have a blank slate than attempt to try to work with the choices. Because game design has gotten lazy. And they stopped caring. That is literally what it is. Now they'll try to sell it off. Or they'll try to spin it. They'll try to say, oh, we did this so that we didn't break your lore. When they're already breaking lore left and right. But again, beside the point. This amusing little tweet right here very simply sums up how so many players are feeling right now. Dragon Age fans, here's my 300,000 words of lore about my Inquisitor. DragonAge The Veilguard. Okay, we only need to know like 3 things in your name. With the news, there is of course Cope. This person says, after mulling over the information today, I feel it's a good thing not to include a bajillion choices for things that primarily affect Ferelden and Kirkwall. We are in the far north reaches, with a player character who's probably never studied Ferelden history or could even point Kirkwall on a map. I think this decision has freed up a lot of space for the writers, which I feel will make a stronger narrative without leaning too hard on the past. And unfortunately, most of us wanted the connection to that past. Most of us wanted to see where the story, not necessarily of our Inquisitor went, but the story of the world that we built. And that is probably part of what they're missing is, yes, people loved their Inquisitor. People loved their Hawk. People loved their Warden from the first game. We've all loved these characters. But more importantly, we've loved the world that we built through these characters. We loved the worlds that reflected our choices through these characters. And now they've gone ahead and basically just said, we don't care about that. We don't care about the fact that there's so much that could connect, despite the fact that you are in a different portion of the world. These events are world shaping and they're supposed to feel world shaping, and they have removed that. Phil here, I still find it very frustrating that they just destroyed my story for the sake of new players. Of course, this will not affect my walkthrough, and I will spend at least 500 hours and at least 7 rooks in this game, but it's still a shame. That's a person with some serious commitment. I'm not even gonna lie, because it couldn't be me. But I'm not writing a walkthrough either, so the fact that they're willing to put in that kind of commitment for a walkthrough, good luck to them. Making the one Dragon Age game that is the closest to an actual sequel in the entire franchise, the one where they decide to soft reboot it and not carry over 99% of the choices, was certainly a choice, I guess. Yeah, this is the only time really in the entire, and that's probably part of what boggles me the most about this whole thing. This is the first time that you're going literally from the one directly into a continuation of the story into the other. And they don't want to know anything about the world that you created at all. They do not care about the world that you created, because instead they need their story that they created to be the only story. There really was never quite a canon playthrough of Dragon Age. It was your canon. It was the canon you built. So to just totally take this and throw that out the window, if you can tell me that that is not a slap in the face to the people who have loved this game, to the people who have loved not the battle system, not the character designs, not the art style, but the story of this game, then I don't know what to tell you. We're not going to be able to have a discussion, because I'm going to think there's something mentally wrong with you. If someone responds to this one, making a 4th installment to a choice-based RPG and not including choices that allowed the player to shape the world in the previous games is such a strange decision. Apparently this one put out another tweet. Discover more is fun sometimes. I'm sorry, I don't buy that they didn't want to do references to previous games, all because it's not plot relevant and no one wants cameos and one-liners. Y'all have been making RPGs for too damn long and have made some of the most beloved ones at that to say something like that. And here's another part of the problem. The people who made this game aren't the people who made the first 3. They just aren't. They're not the people who had the same love for the game that the previous ones did. This is the type of game that would have benefited mostly from having a consistent team all the way through to the bitter end, because they built it, they loved it the same way we built our worlds. But now that's gone. This one says, I think one positive takeaway from the disappointing news is that everyone's upset reaction is just indicative that we obviously care deeply about Dragon Age and its story. Meanwhile, all my complaints are just some bitter person who just hates woke. Had nothing to do with the fact that I loved the game and all the way across the game and everything about it. But hey, this time, now that they're disappointed, it's justified, It just shows how much they love the game. I'm not bitter about that at all. Swooping is bad. 3 choices, so not even Solas's approval mattered. Who drank the well? If Abolus is still kicking around? Mages or Templars? If my Warden found a cure? And praying for DLC, to be honest. No, you're not really going to get any DLC that fixes this. You're screwed. Screwed. Sorry. Veilguard spoilers. This one stings. How can the choices of who was left in the Fade or what we did with the Wardens not matter when we have a Warden companion? And the whole Well of Sorrows. Does that choice's consequences only occur in Trespass? And now, not even the elven gods actually walking around? Like, can the others not sense that our Inquisitor drank from the well? Or if Morgan did, since she's also in the game? I just do not understand having these huge choices in Dragon Age Inquisition and not having them matter in this game. This one says, I'm as upset about the Well of Sorrows as the next person, but even more about how the 3 Dragon Age Inquisition choices in Dragon Age The Veilguard are purely Solas related. I feel for the players who didn't particularly care for him because they're now forced to pretend they did. I know he plays a crucial role in Veilguard. I played Trespasser. But having to make your entire character purely off of how they interacted with Solas is a garbage decision. Imagine having to rebuild HOF only based on their choices with Anders, since he's a central character in Dragon Age 2. It's the same situation as Anders appearing in Awakening. An expansion, much like Dragon Age The Veilguard choices only pertain to Trespass. There was an entire game before that, one with choices meant to affect Thedas as a whole. The whole North-South Thedas Cup out feels forced. Yep, I have to agree there. He says you can't reject companions either. You are now the NPC in your Dragon Age game and not the main character. And then remember, they can have all sorts of relationships without you. Basically, I would imagine if you walk away and leave your character in the game will play itself. They don't need you after all. You are not in this game to tell your story. You are in this game to watch their story. Another one, I think it's hilarious and obnoxious that BioWare's decided that for the Veilguard, the fact that my Levelon fucked Blackwall is more worth tracking than the Orlesian Divine, the Mage Templar War, the Well of Sorrows, the Titan in Descent, plus the first 2 games put together. Yes, who you slept with in the previous game matters more than all of the world-shaping choices you made throughout the other games. So it says, God, thank you. I'm always the first to admit he's such a great character, but I do not mesh with him. I can't stand him. Punched him in our 90th argument. Inquisitor vowed to end him if they met again. Whole 9 yards. Having a sequel being ostensibly his game is hard to swallow. The first 2 aren't necessarily Solas related. Really only the stop or save choice, which is kind of dumb to make that matter since it's been a decade and they could have easily have changed focus from a decision made back then. But if you don't care for Solas, you're cooked anyway. And then this says that they feel that Dragon Age The Veilguard is catering to the Solas Inquisition romance, and that's exactly what it sounds like to me. And the Inquisitor is just being reduced to Solas's plot armor. This guy, when the downer bald elf that you had sitting in the corner most of the game, because you're running with a dwarf and a bullman, becomes super important to the plot. Yep, we've been told your choices don't matter by Dragon Age. Interesting choice to make that man the only character whose choices mattered / had agency. What did Dragon Age mean by this? This tweeter says, is anyone else worried how their Inquisitor will be portrayed now? Like, since we have such limited choices and we have no control over the dialogue? And Wicked Angela's responds, been so pumped and positive about the game, but 3 choices only and you can't even choose the class of Inquisitor is inexcusable. So yeah, now if you were a mage or whatever, apparently you don't get to specify that that's what your class was. It doesn't matter. This murders any excitement or anticipation I had built up for Veilguard. Very happy I didn't pre-order it. If I still play at all, it'll only be after waiting a good long time after it comes out and judging from post-launch reception if it's worth it. Maybe only if it's on sale. This one says, I'm thinking of canceling my pre-order after this, to be honest. I think Veilguard will be great, but if our choices from other games don't matter anymore, then what is the point? And yeah, there is no point. They basically took 95% of the reason people had to be excited about this game and shoved it out the window. Goodbye. Fuck off. Your stories don't matter. Your world doesn't matter. What you did doesn't matter. Here's our story. Because that's what you really want, right? You want our story. You want to hear what we have to say. You want to see what we wanted you to see, right? Right? And it's very irritating. And then what I find doubly interesting is the people who complain but then immediately feel the need to defend themselves. With the reveal of like 99% of our choices not carrying over in Veilguard, I feel frustrated and let down. 10 years. 10 years of game development hell, only for none of it to matter. Not all of us give a fuck about Solus or his romance. Still gonna play the game. I've been waiting this long. But to say I'm disappointed would be a massive understatement. And then this one where, you know, it's obvious she's concerned that people are going to be upset that maybe this post sounds like she's not really excited for the game. Says, honestly, the whole 3 choices business only cements the theory that by the end of Dragon Age 4, the world of Thedas will be so radically changed, like for instance by the veil coming down and magic coming back in full force, that our previous world states won't matter. And then she says, I want to clarify, I'm still excited and looking forward to the game. Yeah, well, I'm not, because I don't care about the story that these developers are trying to tell. I cared about the world that I built. I cared about seeing where that world went. And now you're telling me that that world doesn't matter. Which, I mean, I guess I shouldn't be surprised. You can have some serious problems getting Origins to just run on your computer. The whole thing makes me want to try again to try to get it to run without crashing like it was, but I don't know what else I can do about it. It's very frustrating. Maybe I'll uninstall entirely and try again. We'll see about that. But it's a whole thing, guys. The world of Thedas is not your world. It is a developer's world. The world that we once loved, that we made all these decisions for, the lives that we saved, one might say, to make ourselves sound a little more grand than we really are, is gone. And they don't care. Their story matters more than the story that you wanted to tell. And honestly, I think that's what hurts me the most in this whole thing, is I always felt like Dragon Age was, yes, it had its own narrative, its own immutable points, one might say, in history that you couldn't change because the story was going to go a certain way. But there were always things around it that you could change that made the world uniquely yours. And at this point, I don't trust them to do that in Veilguard. Especially if they can't even honor the choices I made in the past, except for who I slept with, apparently. And yeah, it's just not worth it, is it? At least not to me. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments. There will be a stream tonight, 7 p.m. Mountain Time, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. We're going to play more Baldur's Gate 3 because, why not? But I have fun doing that, and I like hanging out with you guys. So feel free to stop by. We'll have a little bit of chat. Maybe argue. Who knows? But I'll see you there. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Please like, comment, subscribe, and turn on the notifications. If you really liked it, you can feel free to share it around, and I will catch you later.